Welcome to Eye on America. I'm Michelle Miller. From different cultures to new technologies, we bring you the stories of communities across America that are conquering challenges they face. First, rising mortgage rates and surging home prices are locking millions out of the American dream of owning their own home. But Nancy Ching gives us an exclusive look to one company who believes it has a possible solution.
So this is home.
Yes, this is home.
April Stringfield has always wanted to own a home. But she never imagined this is how it would come together for her and her son.
They tell you 3D printed house. Your first thought is,
What? Literally. What is the 3D home?
Stringfield's house in Williamsburg, Virginia is the first owner-occupied 3D printed home from Habitat for Humanity.
You can feel it. It's just good detail.
The concrete walls of the 3-bedroom house were constructed in less than 30 hours by Iowa-based company Alquest 3D.
a machine like this could revolutionize affordable housing.
Oh yes, that is the goal.
Company founder and CEO Zachary Mannheimer says 3D printing cuts costs up to 15% by scaling back labor, materials, and time. Prices for the home start at $175,000. While there are concerns about displacing traditional construction jobs and some environmental impacts of this method, Mannheimer believes his technology has potential.
People cannot afford a home. That is the American dream, or rather was the American dream. We need to get back to that. 3D printing technology is one way to do that.
The company aims to build 200 3D printed homes over the next 3 years, primarily in Southwest Virginia, breaking ground in what is now an empty field.
Alquest's goal in creating what would be the world's largest 3D printed community is also to potentially revitalize the town and others like it in rural America.
There's nowhere in the U.S. where someone working full-time at minimum wage can even afford to rent a 2-bedroom apartment, let alone buy a brand new home. Mannheimer says the company is partnering with local and state governments to fix that.
These towns were once vibrant, and these towns can wave their hands in the air and say, hey, our community is great, we want you to come here. But if you don't have a home, none of that matters.
So this is my room.
For Stringfield, laying the foundation of her home was the accomplishment of a lifetime.
I cry sometimes, but I'm just so happy that I finally have a place to call my own.
Young adults on the autism spectrum have one of the lowest rates of employment among people with disabilities. But Catherine Herridge introduces us to a federal agency that's tapping into their unique skills to serve our country in the intelligence field.
As the war unfolds in Ukraine, intelligence officials rely on satellite images to map movements of Russian forces and on analysts in a field where seeing the world differently has its advantages.
It really feels like for the first time I'm getting to use the strengths that I have.
33-year-old Morgan McCardle is a geospatial analyst at the U.S. government's mapping agency called the NGA.
I'm pretty good at finding patterns.
Zeroing in on tiny details, like this Russian military base near Alaska.
You could see the construction of this area over time.
McCardle sees the big picture in big data sets.
How big is big?
Pretty big.
Okay.
In school, McCardle struggled for years not quite fitting in before landing a position so secret she can't discuss her portfolio.
Was school tough for you?
Extremely. It was really difficult for me.
Though early on, McCardle's mother saw her potential.
She could read the billboards backwards, and she would do it perfectly.
But it wasn't until McCardle's own 10-year-old son, Gabriel, got diagnosed as autistic that she began to notice her differences.
My mom was like, well, your son can't have autism. He's just like you.
She says you were surprised.
I was.
Were you surprised?
I was. Because she's so high functioning.
Without good options to support her son, McCardle joined a small pilot program with 4 participants at the NGA.
How has the job changed your life?
It's changed everything about my life. I mean, I was on disability for almost 10 years.
10 years?
Here, McCardle's difference actually gives her an edge.
Sometimes I can take what it would take a week for somebody to do in a couple of hours.
A couple of hours?
Yeah, but that's the advantage to being able to hyper-focus.
A new kind of insight that the agency's deputy director calls neurodiversity.
This is really broadening that perspective, digging into how can individuals bring a talent and ability that is different than others.
And you can notice patterns of changes in the images.
Is that easy for you?
It is. Well, this tiny little building right here, you know, if it expands, that'll be the first thing I notice on the next image.
You immediately go, aha,
Absolutely.
this has changed, right?
Yes.
That maybe some of your colleagues don't key in on.
Mm-hmm.
Childhood autism diagnoses have more than doubled since 2000, and nearly half of 25-year-olds with autism have never held a paying job. Now, more families are reaching out to the intelligence community to learn more.
What's it like to get those emails?
For me, it's touching. As a mother, I certainly can understand wanting the very best for your children.
Come on, bud.
And broadening the spectrum of potential.
It's a lot like finding where I fit in, finally. I was looking for an outlet, and it found me, I suppose.
How does that feel inside?
Oh, wonderful. The sky's the limit now. I don't feel like there's anything holding me back.
Now helping the U.S. spy community with a different kind of intelligence.
It's a lot of data to wade through, but that's an advantage to being autistic.
After the break, we show you a first-of-its-kind heart transplant that could transform patients' lives. You're watching Eye on America. A baby born with a congenital heart defect and a non-functioning immune system was fighting for his life until Duke University surgeons performed a first-of-its-kind transplant. Omar Villafranca tells us more about the potential medical breakthrough that could help organ transplant patients worldwide.
Easton Cinnamon hasn't taken his first steps, but his parents Caitlin and Brandon say he's already been on the journey of a lifetime.
When we found out that we were having a boy, we also found out about his heart defect.
Easton was born with a serious congenital heart condition that left him with half of a functioning heart. At only 5 days old, doctors performed open heart surgery to fix the aorta and a leaking valve in his little heart. A few days later, Easton survived a life-threatening cardiac arrest.
We actually had the conversation of he was put here for a reason, and that reason we don't know. Maybe he was here to be a donor for another child. We were having that conversation, you know.
A few months after, another heart procedure was unsuccessful. Easton needed a new heart and was put on the transplant list. But blood tests revealed another problem. His immune system was not working, and he needed a new thymus. Dr. Joseph Turek is the chief of pediatric cardiac surgery at Duke University and is Easton's doctor.
The thymus is part of your immune system, and it makes T cells that T cells can be good. They fight infection, but they can also be bad in the sense that they will reject an organ.
Transplanting a heart and implanting cultured thymus tissue grown in a lab from the same donor had never been performed together before. Amazingly, Easton was at the very hospital that had been studying that type of procedure for decades.
This doesn't happen very often where you'd be working on something in the laboratory and it has direct translation and could help a patient that you're taking care of.
Doctors had to get FDA authorization for the surgery, and after consulting with physicians, the Cinnamons agreed to the first-of-its-kind surgery. After 112 days on the transplant waiting list, a heart became available in August of 2021.
The way that it was put to us is if it doesn't work, you're going to be on the same path you're going to be on the transplant anyway.
And if it does work?
And if it does work, you can change the world.
That's because organ recipients face unique challenges. The immune system T cells made in the thymus could reject a new organ. To prevent that from happening, recipients have to take anti-rejection medicines, which can have harsh side effects for patients. Duke researchers say by transplanting both a solid organ and cultured thymus tissue from the same donor, it could potentially eliminate the need for anti-rejection medicine. Transplanted hearts currently last about 10 to 15 years. The hope is to extend that significantly, potentially up to 40 years.
This could apply to any organ, any solid organ transplant that we do.
When you hear that,
it's a broad group of people that could benefit.
I mean, that is millions.
Yeah, absolutely.
8 months after making medical history, Easton is finally home with Mom, Dad, and his big sister Ivy.
Hi! I like to hold him and play with him.
When we first brought him home in September, he couldn't hold his head up, he couldn't sit up on his own, and now he's dancing in his chair and walking around the house in his walker, chasing his sister.
The Cinnamons are now focused on making memories as a family.
We now turn our attention to a youth program helping refugees adapt to life in America. Last year, more than 12,000 refugees were resettled to the U.S., many of them children. Adriana Diaz sat down with a group of young refugees living in Chicago to see how this community program has changed their lives.
What I do remember is sound of gunshots, sound of pain, sound of people stuck in the war for 40 years. That's all I remember from Afghanistan.
In Burma, there's military coup, so we can't go back to Burma.
Mohammed, do you remember what it was like in Syria or why you guys left?
We left because there was a lot of war and it wasn't pleasant, lots of shooting.
To hear children speak so plainly about war and human suffering is not easy.
We came to the U.S. because my mom wanted like a better education and just life in general.
My name is Noor, and my intention for today was to learn more about animals.
But despite the odds, these kids have found hope and bonds with each other through the similar stories of their parents' sacrifice.
How hard was it for you guys to get used to life here in Chicago and making American friends and learning the culture?
When you step out, there's nobody really you can talk to. There's nobody you can share your feelings to. You feel very, very alone.
It was hard because we didn't really know any English, so we couldn't communicate.
Unfamiliar language, culture, and unspoken societal rules keep many refugees in their homes. But so much time indoors can deepen feelings of isolation, especially for kids.
I was a little bit depressed because I literally couldn't do anything except stay at home. But as I talked more in school, I started making more friends and I started explaining my feelings.
Because what happens when you keep your feelings bottled up?
You won't make friends if you don't open your emotions or talk to anyone.
Getting kids to open up and socialize is the goal of REACH, a nonprofit in Chicago that connects refugee youth through activities.
I was approached by several members of the local refugee community. They were worried because a lot of their sons and daughters were facing a lot of academic failure, social isolation, bullying.
I want us to think about a couple of things that you want to try to find.
Shauna Wills has worked with the refugee community here in Chicago for more than 30 years, and she knows the pitfalls.
They're expected to learn a new language, adapt to a new culture, understand a new school system, and then do that while also finding the right peers. They feel like they need to fit in, and so they're easy targets for gang members. We've seen a lot of refugee young people who've lost their lives to violence here.
So they're even more vulnerable to gang violence and recruitment.
Very much so.
When they come to this country for a better life.
Yeah, you're gonna make me cry because we've lost a lot of kids.
That's what keeps her on this now lifelong mission to help these kids grow into their own identities while becoming familiar with their new country. The program exposes them to new experiences designed to build confidence, and it also uses nature as therapy.
The most important thing that happens is that they start to feel a sense of belonging.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
One look at their faces, and you see the impact.
Are you ready?
Yes. All right. What have you gained through REACH?
A lot of confidence, being more social, more activities, like more talking to people.
REACH makes me feel comfortable and confident. I was like shy and I wasn't willing to go out there and, express myself.
So does the U.S. feel like home now?
Yes, definitely.
U.S. feels like home because now everyone is equal. People are saying nice things. They're not judging anyone anymore.
I have a sense of community. I don't feel like the odd one out anymore. I don't feel left out.
When we first came here, I had no confidence in talking to anyone, but now I feel more confident in school and talking to people, not being shy.
I kind of feel that the United States is made of millions of different stars, and by stars I mean different nations, different cultures, and I think one of the stars is my culture, it is me, it is where I belong.
Coming up, scammers in the metaverse. We show you how to protect your real world money in the virtual world. Next. Where the money goes, the criminals follow. That's what cybersecurity experts are warning as they sound the alarm about potential dangers of the metaverse. Researchers predict the global metaverse market could be worth nearly $680 billion by 2030. Here's Anna Werner with more.
If you want to know what can be great about the metaverse, talk to 12-year-old Cooper Stone.
The metaverse is a virtual reality world where you can go to concerts, you can see famous and really cool people around the world.
Cooper plays video games like Fortnite and uses his virtual reality headset to play sports. And in the future, those experiences will likely seem much more real, as Jason Rubin of Meta, formerly called Facebook, told CBS News in February in an interview conducted in their virtual reality program.
But slowly but surely, I think the things you can do in the metaverse and the amount of time you spend in virtual reality in the metaverse will slowly increase to the point where we really become an immersive world.
So it's no surprise that companies are seeking ways to create experiences and make money in the metaverse. But where there's money to be made, the criminals won't be far behind.
We totally expect them to move into this.
Kevin Goschalk is with cybersecurity firm Arcos Labs.
The moment there's a valid metaverse spun up that has a real money mechanism where they can make money, they'll be in there day one.
He showed us how in chat rooms, conversations are already going on about how to exploit the metaverse for fraud.
To sell identities, to sell social security numbers.
Essentially what you're saying is that when it comes to scams, everything old is new again. It's just in the metaverse now.
Right. The way they do it may be slightly different, but what they're trying to achieve, money, and the goal of doing it, duping somebody into giving them money, they're going to be aligned.
Cooper Stone and his parents say they already got scammed when hackers broke into his Fortnite account last year and charged up his parents' credit cards.
They were like, Cooper, did you spend $25 or $50 on this game without my permission? And I'm like, no.
We investigated a little bit more and found out that he had not done it.
Everyone is looking to make money off the metaverse, and the hackers go where the money is.
And Caroline Wong with cybersecurity firm Cobalt.io says criminals' attacks can take on more disturbing forms. For example, if a hacker gains access to your VR headset.
If a hacker can access that camera, they can see into your office. They can see into your bedroom. They can see inside of your home. That's called a camera attack. Another one is called the overlay attack, when they can control what you're seeing and what you're hearing.
So in other words, they're going to change what you see and what you hear.
Yes.
Right, into what they want you to see and hear.
Yes, and because you're so immersed, people may actually have a trauma response.
Not only that, some content in the metaverse might be disturbing to some users, especially children, as Wong and I saw when we donned headsets to visit some VR worlds. In a program called VR Chat, we found users, some who clearly sounded like children, making crude drawings we can't show here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, graffiti.
I think I know what these folks are trying to draw.
And in a user-created room in Meta's Horizon Worlds, we were able to pick up guns lying randomly around a house as other users fired them off.
That's not comforting.
Another user who sounded like a young child played with one of those guns.
Put the gun down! Put the gun down!
I'm the officer.
No, don't push it. You're going to kill it.
So I guess the question is whether you want your child in here.
I would say definitively no.
Meta told us Quest headsets are designed for children ages 13 and up, with some experiences only for people 18 and up. The company says it has set up safe zones inside the software so users can exit situations they might find uncomfortable. And later this month, will offer a way for parents to lock specific apps that aren't age appropriate for teens. VR Chat told us underage users are not permitted and are banned if detected, and that user safety is a top priority.
I think, I hear the companies saying, well, it's just like the real world. You can't protect against everything.
You can't protect against everything, but there are things that you can do. They build the world. They create the experiences. Everything is being monitored already. All of that's being monitored. It can be monitored. It is the appropriate thing to do. It is absolutely possible. And it costs money and resources to do so.
So they have to be willing to step up and do it.
That's right.
The goal, both she and the companies say, is to create safe, enjoyable experiences for all in a new virtual world.
From the dangers of life in the metaverse to the dangers of life in the ocean, about 90% of the coral reefs in the Florida Keys have died over the last 40 years. But the Boy Scouts are taking their survival skills underwater to restore the creatures in the third largest barrier reef system in the world. Bradley Blackburn takes a dive to see how.
On an island in the Florida Keys, these tanks hold a new generation of corals just starting to grow.
So we're just transferring them so that we can clean their tank.
And these are some of the young scouts who are helping care for them.
Right now I'm checking the salinity of the water.
At the Boy Scouts of America's Sea Base, young men and women have been learning to scuba dive for decades, where they've seen up close how the colors and creatures in Florida's coral reefs are under serious threat.
It is dying, to be quite frank. And that's due to a number of factors, changes in water temp, quality, human interaction.
General Manager Mike Johnson thought scouts could be part of the solution. Using a technique called fragmentation, they cut corals into tiny pieces that regrow 50 times faster than they would in nature. The scouts then plant them underwater to rebuild the reef. This is what they can look like after 5 years.
So do you think there might be a coral restoration merit badge on the horizon?
I hope so.
Even without a badge, Scout Warren Vrone knows he's making a difference.
When I remember my biggest accomplishment in scouting, it would probably be the Sea Base program.
Since launching in 2018, the Sea Base Nursery has grown 10,000 corals and is part of a 2-decade project to restore millions of square feet of reef. 15-year-old Ryan Emmons says they're helping the sea and future scouts.
It's going to make an everlasting change and an everlasting benefit for future generations.
A scout service project for Mother Nature, building a brighter future under the sea.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News. I'm Michelle Miller. Thank you for watching Eye on America.